Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Women Veterans Alliance webinar. I am Melissa Washington. I am the CEO and founder of Women Veterans Alliance. And our purpose is to connect women veterans with each other and resources. And we do that through our online and in-person networking and events. And today is one of those events that we put on is a webinar. And we're so happy to have you all here and getting connected to what's going to be a fantastic presentation for all of you. So before we do that, I just wanted to share with all of you, if you're not familiar, that we have launched a new magazine. We've launched in California, the Women Veterans California. We are going to be working on Oregon and Colorado. The deadline for that is December 15th. That's coming in 2023. So if you are interested in having your photo on the cover, submitting an article, advertising, and if you had once called or still call Oregon or Colorado home, please feel free to send in your photo. You can find it at womenveteransmagazine.com. We are in the process of getting the Texas issue out, and then we've got Florida, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And just let all of you know that the covers, these are the 3 photos. All these photos are actually of the photos that are going to be on the cover. These are all the women veterans that submitted their photos for these specific magazines. So also too, if you're not connected with us, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, because this fantastic webinar will be on there, as well as all of our other webinars. If you're not a Women Veterans Alliance member, I highly recommend, if you're interested in becoming a member, to reach out to me. We are continue our membership promo, and you can reach out and we can let you know as far as what that discount looks like for our membership levels. There are so many great benefits to being a Women Veterans Alliance member. And also too, another thing I wanted to share, the Library of Congress, if you're not familiar, they have a Veterans History Project. And they're looking to collect and preserve the accounts of veterans. And right now, only 5% of the interviews that they have are with women veterans. So come on, ladies, we're about 10% of the population. Get your stories in there. You can visit the Veterans History Project, and please do so. It's on my to-do list to make sure that I get mine in there, and we need to make sure that we have our stories there in the Library of Congress. We do have another upcoming webinar next month, August 23rd, with Rita. She's going to talk about relationships when people aren't who you want them to be. And you can go to our website and click on the webinars. Also too, and this is going to go out tomorrow for Women Veterans Engage. This is our in-person and online event that's going to take place in person at locations throughout the US and online. So it's a not miss event happening in September. There. Also too, if you're in the greater Sacramento area, we are partnering with a local jiu-jitsu company that's going to be doing some self-defense and just giving us a lot of great skills on lifelong health skills, and all the information is on our website. So without further ado, this is going to be some good stuff we got going here. I want to introduce you all to Curtis and Karina Kelly. They are married. They met in the U.S. Air Force and have been married for almost 15 years. They have 3 kids and currently reside in Tampa, Florida. After military retirement, Curtis found an outlet through podcasting to continue his passion of meeting and learning about people from various walks of life. Together, they host the Culture Marauders podcast, where they maraud on all culture with the intent of enlightening and entertaining their audience. During the pandemic, many people were looking to start a podcast and needed assistance, and therefore, that's why they created this, and that's why they're going to share all the information with you. And they're passionate about supporting small business owners and started a creator network to collaborate and network and grow together. They feature various entrepreneurs on their podcasts and social media to help promote their businesses. Additionally, they offer podcast production services and training to help businesses start and run their podcasts. These services include show development, design, video, audio editing, social media marketing, and equipment sourcing. If all you want to do is speak and drop the mic, they can help with that too, and take all the editing and distribution of shows off your plate. They also started 2 initiatives to help elevate the voices of women and children by providing hands-on training for podcast equipment and technology. Their goal is to continue assisting others to use their voice and passion to inspire a world of change, one culture, one blood, one love. Curtis and Karina, it is all yours.
All right, all right. Thank you. How's everybody doing today? Give me a wave. There we go. I got a couple of waves and all that good stuff.
Thank you, Melissa. Again, we really do appreciate the opportunity to speak. And, thank you for everybody who's joined in and willing to listen to us today. We're going to share our screen with our slides. A little bit about, our story. And I thank you, Melissa, for being able to share some of that. This whole podcast and the Culture Marauders is really part of our transition from the military story and what we found to do in between, just trying to figure things out and trying to figure out what we wanted to do with our careers, where we wanted to go. And it also was a great opportunity for us to meet different people, to learn about the new environment. We moved to Tampa right after he retired. And we didn't know anybody. We chose a place on the map that, well, number one, that didn't charge the retirement tax. And then number two, that was sunny and it was a beach, because we were always trying to get away every time we were in the service, trying to get to a beach somewhere and enjoy the sun and the ocean. And so coming to Tampa was just kind of like a leap of faith after retirement. And we really enjoyed it, but we didn't know anyone. And so our way of getting out in the community, because being in the military and having to serve, was that we met so many different people, different cultures, and different people from all over. And we have a tribe in the military, but once you get out, it's really hard to find that tribe. And so the Culture Marauders podcast really gave us that platform, an opportunity to meet people and had some great experiences. And so what we hope to do is, through harnessing the power of your voice and through this workshop, is to give you some of that insight and the lessons that we've learned, and also how we're trying to help other people to be able to gain their voice and to utilize that to whatever it is that your endeavors are, whether it's starting up a business or whether you're just looking to meet people or just to have fun. So just kind of giving you some basic tools for that.
All right. So yeah, like she said, basically, the name, the Culture Marauders, right? So everybody has a story. Our philosophy is that anybody can be a marauder on this show. Our show is basically crafted for the people. We have rotating hosts. Anybody can come on and host, as long as you have a story and something that you want to get out to the people. Source your own guests or whatever. It's yours. This is a gift to the people. Like Karina said, coming from the military, we have our tribe. We have those that we've consider family. With the Culture Marauders, once you're on the show, from that point forward, you are a fellow marauder going from there. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right. So
today, there's a couple of things that we're going to talk about today, and I should have put this first. The first thing was to have fun. Podcasting, getting behind a mic and putting on the earphones and just being in front of a camera could be very nerve-wracking for many people. So the first thing you got to know is just really have fun with it. This is your opportunity to make it what you want and to draw in the audience that you want. So I should have put have fun first. That should be the first motto. And then we're going to be looking into exploring the digital footprint. So just going into different podcast formats and so a little bit of history and background knowledge about some podcasting, some statistics, as well as, how to get started. I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, is just defining your audience, and also what equipment and software do I need. So we'll be talking very briefly on that to give you some insight and some tips and tools.
Okay. All right. So here we go, right? So a lot of people aren't familiar with what a podcast is, but if you're one of those people, we got the answer for you right here, right? So podcasts are recorded conversations or discussions, typically hosted by an individual or individuals who lead a conversation, share stories, or, report the news. It's not a hard concept. If you have the equipment, you can host a podcast. There's an audience out there for everybody, believe it or not. So the power of podcasting, which is a relatively inexpensive, way of getting out this information, you too can do it. Yep. All right. So go ahead. So with that being said, like Karina had mentioned before, So, we have the great moments in podcast history. I myself am a big history dork, right? I love history. I like the History Channel, military history, all those things. Well, podcast history is no different. You have significant moments within the platform and the genre. So let's start with the 80s, right? Big hair, padded shoulders, all those things, neons and stuff like that. Let's go with the 80s. So the origin of podcasting, as you see over to the left, dates back as far as the 80s, when the World Wide Web, aka the internet, right? And then when RCS, which is known as Radio Computing Services, provided music and talk-related software to radio stations in a digital format. So this is initially known as audio blogging. All right. Let's fast forward to the 90s. Okay, a lot of neon, 90210, Melrose Place, things that we all like and enjoy, right? So the emergence of internet radio. Websites began offering audio subscription services, which laid the foundation for the subscription services that we see today, such as, your Spotify, your Apple Music, all those things. All that foundation was laid in the 90s. So one of the first internet-based shows was the Internet Talk Show, which basically was the first weekly computer radio show, which interviewed computer experts. Again, like I said in the beginning, there is an audience for everything, including people, who want to talk about computer or talk to computer experts. Let's fast forward, right? The new millennium, Backstreet Boys, all those cool things, Britney Spears, all that good stuff. So Christmas of 2006 was significant because Queen Elizabeth, she made a speech, and it was available for the first time to be downloaded as a podcast. So, Queen Elizabeth carries a lot of weight. And so for her to invest in this, this new medium, that says a lot, for her interest, and then, everything going forward with it. You also have other key players in the industry. Sarah Koenig, Serial, an investigative journalism podcast. That thing took off and spread like wildfire. Everybody wanted a piece of it, right? So it was the first true crime podcast, or at least one of the first, and the first to actually win a Peabody Award. This thing is still going strong. True crime podcasts are among the most popular out there for actual downloads, and people subscribe to them. And Serial is one of them. So if you haven't checked it out, please do so. It's good stuff out there. And then before the turn of the century, podcasting wasn't even a word, but thanks to digital music devices such as your iPods and all those things, well, a small upstart company by the name of Apple actually developed the word podcast, to go with its, with the products, iPod and stuff like that. So that's where it came from there. So as you see here on the board, on our board, a lot of celebrities, a lot of influential, people out in the world, a lot of influential women have all tested their podcast skills. The one in the middle where it says One Child at a Time, those are the hosts of MommyCast. That was the first women's podcast to actually be sponsored. It was sponsored by Dixie. And this was back in the 2000s, early 2000s, I want to say. And so they were the first ones to actually get a major sponsorship deal. And they talked about things such that were prevalent to mothers. And it's just a conversation between two moms. So Call Her Daddy is a little bit more on the racy side, but it's super popular out there. And it's one of the top podcasts hosted by women. So the host out there, she's wild, but good information. And then you also have the Michelle Obama podcast. Who doesn't love Michelle Obama, right? So she's out there doing her thing. Her and Barack actually just left Spotify and moved to a different platform that they're going to be announcing here. If they haven't announced it already, it's going to be coming soon. And so you can go ahead and check that out as well. So those are just a few of the key players out there who are in the podcast industry and still doing things. I don't think Queen Elizabeth is hosting her own, but I would probably listen if she did. So just check those out. There's a lot of podcasts hosted by women out there, all different genres and everything. So you're never too far from some good information. All right.
Yeah. So next, this is, where he's the history buff. I am the data, scientist nerd. And so my background's in public health and in been for past 16 years. So I love data because it helps inform us about where we're going and what we're going to do. And so one thing that we've noticed is that in the podcasting world, there is not a lot of data, or there hasn't been up until more recently, recent years, data on, how many hosts are women podcasts, and, just basic statistics on listening. I think within the last couple of years, because podcasting has become so popular, we've seen a little bit more data within the last 2 years or so through the pandemic. So more to come, and I really hope to see some of these numbers change. And reason why is that podcasts and data and statistics really help to inform us of where the trending is going to go. If is this going to be, can I make money off of this? Who's listening? Who should my audience be? So this really kind of targets your decisions and what you're going to do with your podcast. So just looking at this basic information, we see that a majority of hosts are men. There's still men podcasts, especially the majority of the ones that are on the top 10 charts. So majority of those are men hosts. So, but we're trying to get those numbers up. I think I see a lot more increases in women hosts. We just need to get onto those top 10 Apple podcast lists and get some more viewership. And sponsors, that's what influences your sponsors, is how much viewers you have. So some of the most popular listening devices is still Apple and Spotify, but those things are changing. There's a lot more different organizations. I think like Our Heart Radios has their own. So the more platforms are being created, which is good because it's going to be a little bit more competition. So you're not going to have all podcasts on just Apple Podcasts alone, and you're going to be in a figure of thousands. You might have opportunities to branch out into some of the other ones that are being created. So, and then looking at, average listening time for users, I think this is really important, is that people only have a time span of a very short while. And that's why we're going to talk really, really fast and get through this, because everybody has an attention span of only like 20 to 40 minutes. After that, if you're still talking about the same thing, the channel has changed. So just want to make sure that we, pay attention to those things as well. And we know that when you're starting those podcasts, that you're kind of paying attention to some of this data and the statistics as we move forward. I only got one more slide on some data and stats, not to bore you with numbers, but this is important when you're looking at different genres. So when you're looking at, when you're starting a podcast and you want to know, well, where do I begin? I love the crafting and I want to maybe do some DIY. Well, where does that rank on podcast genres? Where are people listening? And so it just depends on what audience and the number of people that you're wanting to pull in. So it looks like comedy is the highest right now, and have a lot of comedians that might be on, or just people just adding comedy to their podcast. News podcasts, very popular. Nobody wants to watch it on TV. A lot of people want to listen as they're on the go. True crime and sports and health and fitness always rank really high, as long as with religion and politics. So kind of just being mindful of what the data is leading towards, where people are listening, will help you as you want to grow. So this also could mean that an opportunity is that if you are maybe just doing a pop culture podcast, maybe you might want to throw in a comedian as a guest star to kind of boost your ratings a little bit or get more people. So it's just kind of a way for you to understand how to use the data for podcasts to get more viewers.
Yeah. And this chart right here that Karina was just speaking to, so this is from 2020, right? We all know what went down in 2020. So, if just by looking at what was the most popular, right? We're going through the pandemic, a lot of, not positive things going on in the world at the time. So people were more gravitating towards comedy, right? So you can look at that. People wanted the news to be informed still. So you can see that's why the news is number 2. You also need something just to kind of take your mind off of the stuff that's going on in the world. So true crime, which was already popular prior to the pandemic, and then sports, health, and fitness. A lot of people are going through a lot of transitions, whether it be faith, fitness, learning a new craft. So all of this leads, and by tracking these charts and tracking, these different genres, it kind of tells you where we're at in the world. So just kind of keep an eye out for those things, when those trends, and you can gauge on your own the popularity at that moment. So these also kind of sway and ebb and flow, but for the most part, you're always going to see comedy, news, and true crime more at the forefront of the more popular genres. All right, so let's start getting into it, right? Let's start digging deep. So how can you use a podcast, right? There's a number of different ways and benefits to be had from podcasting. I know, before I wasn't really big into public speaking, but, getting in front of a mic, like Karina said in the beginning, super intimidating. But, the easiest part is, hey, once you get on there and start talking, you know what you're going to be saying. You know, more than likely, you're going to have some notes in front of you, or, you just throw caution to the wind and just get on with it and just start talking. But, it's going to help you, just like, when you were giving a briefing to the commander or, to, whoever your higher ups were, repetition, right? Once you get over it, or once you start doing it, it becomes like second nature. You can get up and speak, and getting in front of that mic isn't as hard as it once seemed. It's actually becomes more empowering because you're delivering a message, right? Another benefit, you're learning something new, right? Every episode, I'm learning something new from our guests, or just getting out there in the public and just, being in the environment. We went to a Filipino festival and covered that. And, we learned about, dances and culture and all the great food that the Filipino community has to offer. So we get an opportunity to learn those things. Improve your listening skills, right? If you're talking, you don't have time to listen, right? So you're improving your listening skills by learning something new from somebody. You learn new technology. When I first started, I couldn't tell you how to use a mixer or edit anything, but because I didn't want to have to pay for an editing service, I taught myself how to edit. So I learned how to use the new technology and the different platforms for editing, as well as the microphones and mixers and all that stuff. So I learned how to use that. And then you also have the ability to tell a story. And we'll get into that more once we get into the actual different formats of podcasting. There is a storytelling version, format. And so, you can learn to tell a story. And I'm sure with all of us with military experience, I do refer back to a lot of my military time for some of my stories and offer that up as a testimonial too. So, all right. You got it?
So these are a couple of different podcast formats, and what it is important just to know, kind of going into it, is when you're building your design as far as your speaking notes and things. Well, what kind of podcast do you want to do? What are you looking for? So a lot of people go into interview and panels. Those seem to be kind of the easiest way to podcast. Is whether you create some questions and you're asking somebody you're the host, so you're controlling the environment, asking the questions and moving people through each step, which actually keeps it pretty organized. There's also the panels, just same panels that we had in the military, where we had different leadership stand up and talk, just a way to kind of bounce questions and also have people interject and have an opinion. So it's more of an opinion based when you got panels on, because you're going to hear from different people. Educational is also something that we do, as well as a host, and you can inform on various topics. There's people who do podcasts on, how to, for instance, I do some jewelry, earrings, and resin. So using, different products and stuff to create those jewelry and those artwork and things like that. So you can do an educational podcast and be the sole host, and not have anybody else. And you could just communicate whatever information that you have or your expertise. And then conversational, having a conversation with somebody. So this one's more of a relaxed environment. You're not going to have an outline necessarily, unless you just kind of keep you guys on time track, but it's more of a conversation. So these are good for like what happened recently, seeing Roe versus Wade, and getting people's reactions stuff. Conversations may be a good, a way to go for that type of, podcast. There's also the nonfiction and narrative storytelling. So this is where someone could speak about a story, tell a story. These are ones that I'm very interested in. I like to know. I'm more of the true crime kind of, even if it's a fake made up story, I just want to hear what's going on. So if you're really good at storytelling, this might be a good way as well to reach an audience. The repurposed content is actually a way for you to utilize some of the audio and change them into video, or video into audio formats. And this is actually really good. Repurpose is the word repurpose. The content of your podcast also helps when you put this like on your website and social media, because the way the website reads is that it pulls the words. So it's like that RSS feeds, and it pulls different words from the podcast. So if you're turning your audio and your video podcast into words, transcribing them and putting them on your website as like blogs, for instance, that is definitely a great way to repurpose and to pull people into, as they're doing search engines type typing, they'll pull them back into your sites, whatever you may have. So that's also great. And then the hybrid is just having, rotating different hosts. This is what we do and just started to do. We like to hear from different people. We don't always want to be behind the wheel. Sometimes we want other people to host on topics that they're more familiar with and bring in their own guests. And it also changes it up. You don't want to hear our voice all the time. It's good to hear from someone else like you.
Yeah. So, but just to piggyback off of what Karina said, all of these formats, they all hold value in some way or form. If you're not an interview person and you don't want to have to formulate questions to keep a conversation going, maybe the conversational one would be more your lane. I myself, I don't know if I can actually do an educational one. I mean, I can for podcasting, which I'm clearly doing, but for the educational one, I myself, I like talking to people. I like pulling information from people and just having those discussions and digging deeper. So more for me, than interview, the panel discussion, and even the hybrid. We're, like she was saying, we're going to be messing with the hybrid format here in our upcoming season, and bringing different people on. And there's an opportunity, like I said, for any of you, if you're interested. And we'll reveal that information at the end. How you can contact us, and we can get that going if that's something that you're interested in. Repurposed content also, another portion of that is something that's already been released, but you pull from that story and retell it just from a different perspective as well. From your perspective, basically what anybody's doing with a news story. If you watch late night TV, you'll have Jimmy Kimmel or any of those Stephen Colbert, or a story that's already been reported and everything. They just put their spin on it on a quick blip. So repurposed content. All right. So now we're going to talk about what you're working with, right? So we're going to get into a basic podcast setup. So very, very, very easy. Okay. Super easy. All right. So basic podcast setup, you need three items. You need a computer or a laptop, a microphone, and headphones. Those are the three things you need. Anything else, those are accessories and stuff like that. And so I'm going to go into a little bit of detail. So the key thing with your computer or your laptop, you have to make sure that your computer has enough memory or storage, to run the editing software. That's where a lot of that gets eaten up. Before you know it, your computer or your memory will be just eaten up with just shows and clips and all those things. So a recommended external hard drive is a must. You always got to have that, and make sure that you're doing constant updates, because it will drop all your stuff. It's happened before and I was luckily able to recover, but make sure you're running those updates and all those things. But make sure you have enough memory and an external hard drive. Next to the quality of your content, the quality of your sound is the next important thing. You don't want to sound like, somebody's talking and you hear something like that in the background. Nobody wants a sloppy episode, right? So, you may have the greatest message in the world, but if people are struggling just to hear it, you're setting yourself up for failure and nobody's going to listen to your show. So make sure that you have a quality mic, which, we do source. So, we go out and get that information and source to, prospective clients or anybody who's just interested. Hit us up, hey, Curtis, hey, Karina, I'm looking at getting into the podcasting world. What are some reasonably affordable mics? We'll drop that information on you, no problem. But you do have different types of mics, right? So dynamic mic, this is recommended with recording with multiple people, right? So let's say if you're looking at doing a panel discussion, I have both. I have a condenser and a dynamic. My first mic, I call her Old Betsy, and this thing is huge. It looks like a lazy Susan, right, in the middle of the table, but it is a great quality mic. This is one I used to do for my first few interviews, and you can drop that thing in the middle of a room and it will pick it up anywhere. Omnidirectional, good quality mic. So those are good. It's a good dynamic mic, and it's also made by Yeti. That's a good product. I'm sorry, Blue, and then the Blue Yeti. So recommended for multiple people. Condenser mic is what I use for solo shows or if individual speaking. Those are excellent quality, but they're very sensitive. And if you don't have phantom power, which is also powered through a mixer, that's where the phantom power comes from. You have to make sure it's charged or has a charged battery or fresh batteries in it. Otherwise, you're going to drop off. All right. You also have USB powered mics, just like your USB cords for your phones and all those things. You can plug those into your laptop, and your laptop will power the mic from there. And then you have the XLR cables, which is it looks like a tubular plug, and it has 3 prongs in it. And those will plug into different mixers and things of that nature. And usually those go with the dynamic, the condenser, as well as the dynamic mics. So it just depends on the powering cord. So your headphones, right? You want to hear what's going out as well as what's coming in, what's going all around you. So your headphones, you don't want to get a really cheap pair. You want to spend, probably about 50, 60 bucks. Audio Technica is a really good affordable brand that you can put out there. You can get, Shure, any of those, Sony, Panasonic. I would really try to stay away from anything that you find for like 20 bucks. The quality on those usually don't run. I would usually aim for 39 and higher, but you're going to know where the quality is. If you're willing to spend a little bit extra on that. You can also identify a lot of issues with your mics. Like when you're doing a sound check, you can hear, a lot of popping and crackling and stuff like that. First of all, you have a shoddy product, but you can also hear from your other guests, if their mics are kind of low and stuff like that, you'll hear that and identify it before you go on to start recording, or before you have to go back and edit it, which is going to extend your editing time. All right. Another thing that you're going to need is editing software, and a lot of them are free depending on which device you use. Mac devices, any Apple device, most of them come with GarageBand as is. All right, I see Cheryl shaking her head; she's familiar. So you'll have that. GarageBand is really good. A lot of records have been recorded, award-winning records. Radiohead recorded an album, a complete album that won a Grammy. Rapper Kendrick Lamar recorded a whole album on GarageBand and it won a Grammy. So the software is good. It's very good. And this is what I use. I use a Mac device, and this is what I use to edit my software. Another one for PC users, they use Audacity, and there's others out there, but Audacity, first of all, is free, and it's really good also if you're not a Mac user. So, and I'm not going to judge you if you're not a Mac user, but that's okay too. So then you have your podcast hosts and distributors as well, right? So your Buzzsprout, Anchor, SoundCloud, and all those. So you're going to need a distributor. So the 3 basics are your computer / laptop, microphone, and headphones. And then your peripheral accessories and distributors will be the editing software, and then your podcast distributor.
And 2 other things. So there are some people that do podcasting via their phone, and this is a new way of doing it. And this is how, if you go through some of those other hosts, what they do is they control the bandwidth, so they have all of you can load your episodes directly onto their software, into their system. But of course, these are ones that you have to pay for. So we can also talk to you about those things if you're interested. And then one thing that I did with him, we're buying all of the equipment. Sweetwater is a really great resource. And what I love about Sweetwater is it's a little bit different than Guitar Center, because when you purchase an item on there, you pretty much have a consultant that stays along with you and that checks up on you and sees if you set up the equipment. Did you set it up correctly? Do you need something else? They're very good with working out with people who are beginners and just understanding. So when you pay for something, you're paying for that consultancy as well, and that person that kind of checks on you and makes sure the equipment's working right.
All right. And they're still contacting me. I've had my stuff for years, and they still contact me, which is great service, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, definitely check out Sweetwater. Good call out. Yeah. All right. So now we're going to get to who's rocking the mic, right? This is where we talk about, who are you, right? Who are you when you decide to podcast? If you decide to podcast, if you're like at the end of this, like, you know what, maybe this ain't for me. I hope that's not the case. But when you do, right? So some questions that you want to ask, just some basic questions. You don't have to get too deep into it. Why did you decide to start podcasting? Right? What is your message? It's important to develop a clearly defined vision. What is the intent of your podcast? We got to go back to the SMART, right? The acronym: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-oriented. Is your vision for your podcast SMART? And what is the end goal of your podcast? So for me, I'll just go through this right now. Why did I decide to start podcasting? Well, I like to talk. I mean, to be honest with you, I like to talk. I like to share experiences. What is my message, right? The message of the Culture Marauders is to enlighten and entertain. It's important to develop this vision, to clearly develop this vision. is also, yes, we can entertain, but we also want to put out valued information so people can learn something that they may not have been privy to before in a fun way. It is smart, it's specific, it's measurable, and it's relevant, time-oriented. Our last episode, our season wrap-up, was on the Roe versus Wade decision, and we had a panel discussion.
And we do seasons for our podcast, so it kind of gives us opportunity to have some downtime to record. So that's also
right. And so the end goal of the podcast was, tying it back to, the defined vision. The end goal is to enlighten, entertain, and just have some fun. And it doesn't have to be anything hard. It doesn't have to be anything highbrow. It's your show. You call the shots, and you make it exactly what it is for you. All right. Did you have anything you want to add?
No,
all right. Okay. So now it's showtime, right? So we talked about how to get you ready, how to get your show, ready to rock, and the things that you're going to need and things to consider when you're developing the idea for your show. And now, how will you get the audience's attention? All right, developing your show and script. Go ahead and take it from there.
Yeah, so a lot of things that we do, we put some examples that what we've done to get the audience's attention. One thing that we love to do with the guests that we have on the podcast is an icebreaker. And this is a way, if you're bringing on different guests and you're going to be asking them questions, a lot of people come on and they're very nervous in the beginning. So icebreakers are a really great way. And it could be a game, it could be questions, pod decks. One's Got to Go. Those are all different types of decks that you could use and that they're advertised for podcasters to utilize on their shows. And it just breaks up some of the conversation. He's going to show you some here.
Yeah.
It breaks up the conversation and also puts your guest at ease. So every single time that we do this, it just makes them laugh. They ended up going right into it, and then they could speak. Another thing that we do, with our audience, we also do it's our initial kind of a highlight, what do we call it? It's the Marauder Minute. And it's just an educational highlight. It could be we do something funny, or we do something that's in the news, or we do something that's enlightening to others. And that's just our way to kind of grab our audience's attention. And it's usually about whatever we're talking about, that topic. So just different ways to pull people in. I mean, some people I've seen on podcasts do a quote or do a meditation, so it just depends on what you want to do to kind of gather that audience. And then also kind of put people, if you have guests on, put them at ease.
All right. So I'm going to show you, just a little bit of what we use, like Karina was talking about, some of our icebreakers, right? So we have these things called pod decks, right? It's a really great product. I believe there's 6 or 7 of these things. You can order them online, as well as One's Got to Go. You can go to Spencer's, you can go to Target, you can go to, I don't think Walmart has them, but Spencer's and Target for sure, and Amazon. You can go on there and pick these things out. All they are is just like questions, just to add. And they even have, this one's called the interview deck, and it has interview topics just to help you out, right? And so you can build your podcast off of that. It's really, really cool. One's Got to Go is another one that I really, really like, where they give you 4 options and you got to eliminate one, never to be seen from again. You find out a lot about people with One's Got to Go. So, that's a lot of fun too. So all this builds up, right? So, with developing your show, this is where your personality really kicks in, right? Where people listening and watching and viewing and all those things, they find out really who you are behind this mic. And this is where you want to, leverage, your experiences, your interests, and build that parasocial relationship. So the parasocial relationship is basically fandom, right? So let's say, somebody's a big fan of Dwayne Johnson, right? You follow everything Dwayne Johnson does, movies, workouts, his eating habits when he's eating like a bunch of pancakes. Karina, right? So she has a parasocial relationship with Dwayne Johnson, even though she's never met him. She feels like she knows him, and that's what you want to develop, with your listeners, a parasocial relationship. So where they follow, and not to the point where it gets like stalky and inappropriate, but where you want to build something, a connection with your listeners. So, and like she said, monologues, current events, humor. You want something to keep people interested, because like she said at the beginning, the average, the attention span for a podcast ranges between 20 and 40 minutes. So you want to get that, you want to get in, drop your information, and get out, and leaving them looking to get to the next show.
So we're pushing our time.
Yes, so we're getting there. Hang with us. All right, so building out. So this is just a rough example of, building out a good script, right? So if you have a sponsor, You can put a sponsor message in the beginning, or you can drop it within as long as you're meeting that requirement for a sponsor. Or if you choose to do a podcast with explicit content, sometimes we, on our show, it's free. So if you want to curse, you want to say something, that's fine. But we put that disclaimer at the beginning. This podcast may contain explicit content, not recommended for those below the age of 15 or 18 or whatever. You have your intro music, intro message. We talk about the episode, the icebreaker. We usually hit about 3 different topics, right? Then you have your supporting ideas. It's basically writing a narrative. If, being in the military, you had to write, here it is in real life, so we basically taken that idea and transitioned it over to podcasting. Again, if, depending on the requirements of your sponsor, you may have to drop another message in there. Make sure you're recapping what you've talked about previously, just to kind of catch up those who may have jumped in a little later. And then, any supporting ideas. The main thing you want to have is a call to action. You want to have a call to action. Where can they follow you? Where can they find your information, social media, emails, any of that stuff? You want them to listen, or you want them to go and do something besides just sit there. Otherwise, you don't build your fan base. You don't build, the supporting element to it. And closing thoughts and outro music if you have it. So, so those are the main things with developing your show script.
Yeah, and why these are important, and a lot of people are like, why do we develop a show? This is just supposed to be kind of, just conversational type of podcast. This really helps you stay on topic. I've heard some podcasts and they're kind of all over the place. So as a listener, you don't even know what's going on. They're just kind of moving around. You don't want to be doing that, just because you're going to lose people and they're not going to know what's happening or what the conversation's about. And then also with the intro and outro music, I know a lot of people have been, pulled in by the, Facebook police and everyone, because they play real music that they hear on the radios. And it's copyright. So you can actually get intro music and outro music. And, people, we work with different clients. We have lots of people who actually create their own beats and their own music that you could utilize. And that could be your intro. And you could, also talk into that over that music. And then that's a way for you to utilize music to go into as far as like an intro or outro.
That's right. So they do have royalty-free music out there. But like she said, we were fortunate enough to partner with 2 artists, one that actually created the beat, and then we actually had a rapper that actually rapped over it. So we have a completely custom sound to our show, which is really cool. So, all right. So here's the part the dreaded part, the worst part of the whole podcasting experience, right? Editing. So you got the best show out there, but guess what? It ain't worth nothing until you edit it. So again, GarageBand, the editing software for the Mac users. It is a complete music studio for your computer, and Audacity, like I said, for PC users. It is very time consuming. If you have a lot of ums and stuff like that, where they teach you, when you're giving briefings, you got to cut those out. That does not change. And, you got to work on those. Otherwise, you are going to spend a lot of time editing your product. Look, I just did it. So be cognizant of that. It's going to happen. Right. So at the end of the day, this is still somewhat of a pirate radio thing. You want it to be as tight and as crisp as possible. There are going to be some situations where you just can't edit certain things out, and that's fine. But and as you go, you'll be more cognizant of that. You'll start hearing your ums, and you'll work to start eliminating those. The more shows you do, it'll become natural, and you'll get better as time goes on. So editing. If you're not familiar with either one of these platforms, I recommend, if you're a Mac user and haven't cracked it open, I had my laptop for a couple of years and never had an idea what GarageBand was until I started podcasting. Cracked it open, I was like, oh man, it's all here. I recommend that you go and check those out and just get a little bit smarter on it, and you'll find that it's a really, really cool tool, both of them, and you can put together a really cool show. All right, so now we're getting down to the home stretch, right? So we want to talk about now that you have your show, and that's better. Now that you have your show and everything, and what do you do with it? It just doesn't magically pop up on the internet and all these different platforms. So you have to have something that's called an RSS, right? An RSS contains information about your show and its episode. It is basically your key to the castle of your show. And RSS, and I thought this was something like really, really profound and like, wow, mind blowing. Really simple syndication. So you can go on and you can create one for yourself, or if you want to use one of those platforms such as Google Podcasts, Apple, Spotify, you can actually create one there. But there's also there's a host site which is at the bottom. The link is at the bottom, rss.com, where you can actually go in and create one. It's free, and it's important because without it, you can't distribute your podcast anywhere. So another way, a free distributor, and I'll just give you this tip right now, Anchor. Anchor is a free distributor, and you don't have to pay monthly or anything. You can go on there, set up your RSS, and you can put in your different platforms. Now, you will have to go in and get the key from those, the different platform keys from those different platforms such as Apple, and like I said, Spotify, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, all those. But you can get those and bring it back to Anchor, plug them in with RSS, and for every podcast that you upload out there, it automatically kicks out to those. So one to cover all. Think of it that way. So your distributor, which is where you host your RSS, Anchor, which I recommended, that will kick out to all the others. Okay. All right. Okay. So that's it, y'all. So, workshop recap.
Yeah, so just some things that we went over today is just how to set up your digital footprint. We went over some history of the podcasting, some data and statistics of how women are performing as far as in podcasts, how many women host, as well as different topics and genres that are at the top right now, and really how to gauge what podcasts you were going to start. We went over different podcast formats, which are important, as well as an outline. And I believe there should be if you guys, when you guys registered, they should have got a piece of paper. I know it's hard to see, but it's on your podcast plan, and on there it just has a couple of just information that this is what we do sometimes with the kids when we're at different workshops, and just helping them really understanding what kind of podcasts you want to do, and kind of putting your thoughts down on the page, and just helps you kind of get started and organize of where you want to go. So, and then we also went over some tech stuff. I know that one is a part is really confusing, and it's really hard for a lot of people to understand. The editing is definitely very intense. So we went over some tools, some resources that we've utilized to help you. And here's our information if you're wanting to contact us for consultation, or you just wanting to ask us a few questions about our podcast,
or even want to be on the show.
Yeah, you got something to maraud on. Like I said, we like to entertain and enlighten everyone, and like to tell people stories. So I'm sure there's different stories out there that you guys have been privy to, and we would love to capture that. That's
right. And so also keep in mind, the women's voice is very, very underrepresented out in the podcast world. So, this is a great opportunity. Even if it's not working with us, you do have the tools to, go out there and get your voice and have your voice be heard. So take advantage of this stuff. There's good stuff out there. So with that being said, that is it. We thank you. But before we get up out of here, we like to give away free stuff. I like free stuff. You like free stuff? And so most people like free stuff. So we want to give away a free coaching session, a free 30-minute coaching session. But you got to give us something, right? So here it comes. I need the 3 items I mentioned needed for a podcast, and at least 2 of the formats mentioned. The first one to throw that up in the chat to me, you'll win the free coaching session. So I'll give it a couple minutes. Whoever can drop those in there for me, you got it. So we'll hang on.
Hey, Curtis, can you just repeat it one more time?
Sure. So I need the 3 items, the 3 essential items that I mentioned to start a podcast, and 2 of the formats, at least 2 of the formats that I mentioned for a podcast. Oh, all right. Let me see the first one. Oh, they're coming in. Let me see.
Oh, here we go.
Let's see. Who was the first one? All right. I have. Okay. All right. Cheryl, close. Nope.
Martha, you're close.
All right. Siobhan, microphone, headphones, computer. Interview. So yep, there it is. So all right, Siobhan, congratulations, you are the winner of the free coaching session. And if you hang tight, I'll get you, or actually go ahead and just type in your a good contact email for you, and we'll go ahead and get that set up. All right, so we got a couple minutes.
Yep.
Melissa, do you mind if we take any questions or anything?
Absolutely. You got some in the chat here. So you have Martha, who's also there in Tampa, has a podcast and she wants to get connected with you all.
Oh, great.
Okay, cool, very cool. I'm sorry.
Another question is asked is what is the difference between podcasting and blogging?
So there's not a very big difference, right? So podcasting can be done digitally. It can be done, you also have a video blog. So there's a couple things within that, right? So podcasting primarily started off just as audio only. So now you have video blogging, which is a vlog, which you can also do as a podcast. So the world's emerging the more and more we get further down this podcasting vlogging rabbit hole. So it depends on how you want to present it. It just as a audio format, that would be more of a podcast, where a video would be a video blog, or if you want to write it out or type it out or whatever, that would be more of a blog.
And definitely what I mentioned before, changing your podcasts and turning them into blogs is very beneficial to get internet traffic back to either your website or what you're doing. So it's definitely, like I said, they're very interchangeable.
So if anybody we've got a few minutes left. If you would like to ask a question utilizing the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself, you've got Curtis and Karina right here to ask the questions. And Curtis, you want to just put on your contact information slide, if you just go back one, just that way in case people want to grab that info.
There we go.
There you go.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. All right, we've got your Gmail. Anybody else? This is great information.
And Siobhan, we got your contact information. Thank you.
Can you say what a condenser is?
Yes, a condenser mic is, hold on, let me go back.
It's a mic. Okay.
Yes, yeah, it's a microphone. I'm sorry. Let's see. There we go. And here's that right there. So it's a condenser mic is like I said, it's one that has to be plugged in. They all have to be plugged in, but this one is more in line of those that are doing a solo show.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
There's a question from Stephanie about kind of like starter packages, as far as how I'm assuming she's interested in get started, but you have like packages. How does that work with working with you all?
Yes, we do. If you're looking for podcast training, Stephanie, is that what you're looking for?
It's usually easier. We usually just do a consult free with anyone who's interested, and really check out what it is that they're needing. If they're just needing a training, or they're looking for somebody to actually do the editing for them and they already got a podcast, or if there's someone that's just looking for, just help with the show notes, or kind of, getting started, like with wanting some of the equipment and some of the knowledge behind that. So we do different, we do customize just depending on what a person needs. Some people don't need everything. So
yeah, and we also have a starting podcasting course called Maraud the Mic. So let's see, Eva, all right. For the podcast. Eva, do me a favor, reach out to us at theculturemarauders.com, and let's just, and I recommend this for anybody. If you have any questions and you may not want to ask it on here, please email us, and I promise you we'll get to each and every one of you, and get you that answer that you want or that you're looking for. But yeah, so as I said, we have a package called Maraud the Mic. It's an intro to podcasting class. It's about an hour, and we run through everything. And we actually, on this one, you actually host a podcast. We want to hear you actually put together something and host a 10-minute podcast, and just have fun with it. So.
And there are lots of, I know, Eva, just for FYI, for a lot of people listening, so there are different conventions for podcasters. We've been to the very large one, and then they come up every year or twice a year, different conventions.
And Diane, no, I didn't talk about the monetization. This is just basically a foundational level webinar. We can go into that if you're interested. We could talk about that later. That's actually our second curriculum. We do have the Maraud the Mic, the intro, and then we have the secondary one that gets into monetization, sponsorship, and other things like that. So, all right. So does anybody have any further questions or anything like that? I really appreciate, Rena, and I really appreciate your time and, coming out and supporting this and, your questions and all those things. And hopefully, we'll hear from each of you and, we'll get something going.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you, everyone.